Solve what should I do if no one looks down on me, junior sister. After the young junior sister failed to seduce the second senior brother and returned home, all senior brothers, including the master, could inexplicably hear the young junior sister's thoughts. Suddenly discovering her junior sister, she was smiling on the surface but cursing in her heart. Surface. Senior brother, are you tired? It's so hard. Heart. Waist. Surface. Second senior brother is the most beautiful I have ever seen. Heart. Nothing but face. Surface. Third senior brother, the most powerful, Xiaojiu wants to become someone like third senior brother. In my heart. Flashy and flashy. Surface. Fourth senior brother will definitely become the strongest alchemist. Heart. It's useless. Surface. Brother Wu's beast control technique is so powerful that there is no one in the world. Heart. Stay away from me, I am allergic to spirit beasts. Surface. 6 senior brothers teach the art of small wine seal script, and small wine wants to learn it. In my heart. I don't know what I'm drawing, even if it's 3,000 paths, or if it's a combination of one side and another. Surface. Master is the most esteemed person in the 9 heavens, and is the lifelong goal of Xiaojiu. Heart. Rare. Sake failed to cross the tribulation due to drinking alcohol. After binding the system, it was discovered that all the previous sects were villains, while all the current sects are male supporting. It is very sad but not panicking. Novel keyword. Surprise. After my rebirth, the whole sect was eavesdropping on my roast that there was no pop-up window. Surprised. After my rebirth, the whole clan was eavesdropping on my roast about the download of the complete TXT. Surprised. After my rebirth, the whole clan was eavesdropping on my latest roast. Chapter 1. First Divorce. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 First Divorce. Sake, you have to return the wedding today, even if you don't, you have to return it. Xiaojiu, listen to your father's words and don't entangle yourself with this Mo Lianqing. Let's just dismiss this marriage. Sake, your whole sect already knows about your collusion with your second senior brother. Do you think you can solve this by hiding back at home now? I'm afraid that at most tomorrow, the people of Jiqing sect will take you back. A clamor broke out everywhere. The girl standing behind a middle-aged man suddenly bent down, panting heavily and covering her heart like a fish out of the water. Shut up. The girl shifted from covering her heart to covering her ears, shook her head vigorously, and her whole delicate face was indescribably ferocious. Xiaojiu, what's wrong with you? Standing in front of the girl, Qingxiuren couldn't help but ask in panic as he looked at his daughter, who was sweating profusely in no time. Shit. As the first sword cultivator on the Great Tao, I died due to drinking alcohol and causing trouble during my ascent. After receiving a string of memories in my mind that didn't belong to me, Sake couldn't help but turn pale. Take it away. She actually took the house of a teenage girl. She had never heard of the reputation of the original owner of the body, but she had heard of the extremely pure door. She and her sword sect are both the first major cultivators, but the two sects no longer intersect except for the annual meeting of young people from various sections. Moreover, Sake is a mixed second-rate sword cultivator who not only cultivates but also drinks alcohol. Congratulations on the host binding the female self-rescue system. Please host the first task to regain the face of the Qing family in front of Mo Lianqing. Just as Sake received the original owner's message, a cold voice popped out of their mind. Who, he said in his own mind. Task countdown, if the host does not accept the task, it will be erased. 10, 9, 8, 7. Sake, don't pretend to be pitiful here. Your appearance will make people feel nauseous and embarrass your Qing family. At this moment, a low voice, like a curse chanter in the dark night, sounded in the air, mercilessly speaking to Sake. Mo Lianqing, don't bully others too much. It's not your turn to educate me yet. The resolute face of the Qingshu people seemed to age a lot in an instant, but they also maintained their daughter with a calm face. After Sake felt her soul slowly accepting this body, she slowly regained consciousness. Although she didn't know what the voice in Shihai was, with the countdown sound, she could clearly feel that her just stable divine consciousness was slowly being pulled away. I dare not think too much, so I settled my mind and spoke up. Master Mo is really a true and upright gentleman. After saying, accept the task, in Shihai, Sake walked out from behind the middle-aged man. Leaving aside the fact that this marriage has not yet ended, you can treat your fiancé AE like this. To put it simply, if this marriage has ended, we are also strangers, and it's not your turn to blame us. Sake looked at the man in front of him with cold eyes, a handsome face, and a straight figure, not to mention his pretty appearance. Her eyes lit up and she lifted her eyelids slightly to look at the man twice. As a sword cultivator, Sake is different from other sword cultivators. She loves to drink alcohol, love the secular world, and love beauty, but unfortunately, she has an excellent understanding. If it weren't for this kind of temperament, she would have soared long ago, and such a thing would not have happened. The Sake girl is now sharp-tongued, and she was the first to seduce her second senior brother from her own school. Now she knows how to do the opposite. Mo Lianqing's thin lips moved slightly, and cold words came from his mouth. Sake flashed through my mind for a moment, and the so-called seduction was nothing more than the favored junior sister of the school, which was the design of the female protagonist given information by the system. Nowadays, it seems quite easy to let the reputation of Sake be tarnished. Mo Daoyu's words are interesting. I seduced second senior brother. Why did Mo Daoyu catch me in bed, or did my second senior brother admit to being seduced by me? Sake, I didn't expect you to start being so shameless. The woman behind Mo Lianqing heard Sake's words and directly cursed at Sake. Upon hearing the words of Sake, Mo Lianqing's face darkened, and there was disgust in his eyes as he looked at Sake. The woman behind Mo Lianqing is none other than Mo Lianqing's cousin, who is also the legitimate daughter of the Red family of the 7 great aristocratic families. This woman has always admired Mo Lianqing. Today, I heard that Mo Lianqing is going to divorce Sake, so I volunteered to follow her. Miss Honglian was so close to Mo Daoyu, but she wanted to seduce him. Mo Daoyu didn't refuse, but he indirectly admitted. Looking at the charming people around Mo Lianqing, Sake's eyes and lips sneered. In one sentence, the whole audience. In an uproar. Sake, you're speechless. Red Lotus, standing next to Mo Lianqing, secretly glanced at her and saw her frown. She couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed, but at this moment she could only put her mind back and shout at Sake in anger and embarrassment. Sake girl, don't make trouble without reason, Mo Lianqing said coldly. Causing trouble without reason. What Mo Daoyu said also has a lot of elements of causing trouble without reason. The charges given are not supported by any evidence. This kind of uproar has caused trouble for our Qing family, and it seems that the Mo family has not taken the Qing family seriously. Since I wanted to withdraw, it was originally a dull marriage arranged by Grandpa Mo of the Mo family. At that time, both of us were young and had no say. As we grew older, I admired you very much and agreed to it. However, it was not yet enough to show respect for you as a friend of the Mo family. Speaking of this, Sake paused slightly, looked up and down at Mo Lianqing, and then continued. The words mocked, it's not impossible for Mo Daoyu to want to divorce. There is always a possibility of compensation after breaking the agreement. However, I still have some good feelings for Mo Daoyu, so I don't want those compensations. Mo Daoyu can clear my family and apologize to my father. That's all. Sake spoke for a long time, but it was neither urgent nor slow, with a calm tone. Finally, she looked at Mo Lianqing with a faint gaze. Little wine. Standing next to Sake, the Qingshu people looked at their precious daughter with tears in their eyes, as if her daughter had finally grown a brain. Are you crazy about Sake? Let Lianqing apologize to you. Red Lotus looked at Sake with some disbelief. Mo Dao, you can't even pull this face down. Seeing that Mo Lianqing's face was ugly but he didn't speak, Sake asked back. How dare you bring a few miscellaneous items to the Qing family like this? You may not be sure. If Mo Dao you don't give an explanation for sake today, tomorrow Mo Dao you will bring a beautiful woman to the Qing family and cause his fiancée Ae to withdraw without showing affection. This kind of immoral behavior will spread to all sections. At that time. When Sake said this, his words paused slightly, then he smiled innocently and looked at Mo Lianqing. Immortal virtue may not be as important for sake, but for children of aristocratic families like Mo Lianqing, today, Lianqing caused trouble without understanding the reason, and insisted on causing trouble. It was really impolite. Uncle Qing, Miss Sake, I apologize. Mo Lianqing's handsome appearance was already covered in frost, and he bent down, speaking coldly. As soon as Mo Lianqing finished speaking, he saw the entire Qing family and his family talking about their colorful faces. Mo Dao Yu is serious, the Qing family is suffering. The Qingshu people here even lifted their chin and looked arrogantly at the young man bending over their waist. The first second he spoke seriously, the next second a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Sake walked slowly to Mo Lianqing's side and took a jade pendant from his waist. Sake also apologized to Mo Dao Yu, and the engagement token was returned to the Mo family. Sake was held between the index and middle fingers as the jade pendant was handed to Mo Lianqing, who was bent over. Release his hand as he straightens up to take it. Pada, the jade pendant fell to the ground. Oh, it seems that Sake and Mo Dao Yu won't even be able to become strangers in the future. The implication is that if you meet in the future, you will become enemies. If I am not satisfied, I will give you 2 swords. After finishing speaking, he looked at the man bending down to pick it up and chuckled softly. When the Qing family was young, they didn't send ink to their friends. After finishing speaking, he led the Qingshu people slowly towards the Qing mansion. Ding, the task is completed. Please have the host sign in to receive the task reward. A complete plot, main and branch tasks will be launched, and a task information survey form will be provided. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. On the surface, senior brother is so hardworking, heart waste. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. On the surface, senior brother is so hardworking, heart waste just entered the gate of Qing's house over there. My son has achieved great success. Today, he really vented his anger on my family. The Qingshu people here were looking at the sake, wiping it with a stream of snot and tears. There is a strong desire in my family for a woman to grow up quickly. God knows how much humiliation both the daughter and the Qing family have suffered since their daughter fell in love with that boy from the Mo family. However, his daughter likes it, and even if it's difficult, he doesn't want to blame Sake for his family. But now it's different. Just now, my daughter unexpectedly withdrew from marriage with Mo Lianqing, and she voluntarily proposed it. How could he not be excited? Dad, I'm a bit tired. I'll go back and rest. Sake looked at the middle-aged man like this and didn't dare to approach him, so he took a few steps back to the side. Make a pitiful appearance and support your head. Okay, don't be sad. Being a father in all corners of the world will always find you a suitable husband. Qing Su thought that although his daughter had made a decisive decision against Mo Lianqing, she still had feelings. It was probably because she felt sad in her heart that she refused to approach her, and couldn't help but look at her daughter with some heartache, so she also agreed. Thank you, Dad. Sake bid farewell to Father Qing on this side, and then walked towards his own room based on the original owner's memory. Just arrived at the room and quickly closed the door for sake. What exactly are you? Where did the original owner of this body go? Sake kept asking in my mind. I'm not a thing, I'm a female self-rescue system. It detects the host's powerful divine sense and binds it. The host only needs to complete the task to obtain the right to use this body. If the task fails, the host will be wiped out. The voices in her mind didn't hesitate, and when she asked, she replied one by one. The original owner voluntarily broke away from his physical body, only to rewrite his own destiny. Of course, we will make use of the original owner's divine consciousness. I still have a glimmer of divine consciousness, and after all, it seems like it's not your turn to control it yet. Sake frowned and said to the so-called system. Note that the host's divine consciousness should have been shattered at the moment of ascension, and it was a system pieced together. Therefore, the host can only stabilize their divine consciousness by completing tasks. The cold voice seemed to know what Sake was trying to say, and coldly answered Sake. Sake fell silent. That is to say, her first sword cultivation in the hall was grasped by someone at the door of her destiny. May I ask if the host has extracted the plot? The system didn't give Sake any time to think, and after a moment of silence, it spoke coldly. Successfully extracted the plot. Do you treat me like a human being? Do tool people have no emotions? Sake has no expression on its face, but it roars in its heart. Book title. The Demon Girl Becomes an Immortal, type. Cultivation and Love Story. Female lead. Ran. The female protagonist's personality. Innocent and lovely on the surface, with a white lotus flower, but secretly with a black scheming little green tea. This is an article about cultivating immortals and talking about love. In the book, Ran is the daughter of the heavenly way, and then she falls in love with a group of lucky sons, who are all kinds of men. Sake. Currently the host, she is a malicious female supporting character. In the book, she is the youngest disciple of Master Jiqing, arrogant and domineering. In the end, she was dismembered by the female lead men for framing her. The host task is to change the fate of the female supporting character, conquer the target character, and walk out of her own path. The current task is completed, and the opening task is to refuse marriage and save the face of the Qing family. Sake listened to the system slowly chattering a lot, and currently only the female lead is given as the main character. What about the identities of others? Sake asked as she rubbed her temples. Garbage system, Sake murmured in my heart. Because of the lonely life of Jian Xiu for 100 years, he has developed the character of wine-loving roast. After all, no one can hear him. Waiting for the host to trigger. The cold sentence from the system completely interrupted Sake's desire to speak. The only thing Sake did this night was to make the divine sense fully accept this body, achieving a complete fit between the two. After a sleepless night, the next day Sake was refreshed. The powerful spiritual consciousness brought Sake peace of mind. Although it was only 1/10 of what it used to be, sword cultivation never emphasized spiritual cultivation. Many foundation-building sword cultivators challenge Jindan cultivators, and even Yuanian cultivators have 5 or 5 openings, let alone Sake. According to Master Yanqing's true words, the wicked disciple Qingjiu will quickly return to Jiqing and receive punishment. As soon as the sake took its last sip of true qi and let go, the clear and cold sound of mountains and flowing water came from outside the door. Ding, the guide character Nye Ling appears. Please meet with the guide character as soon as possible. Current favorability rating .500. The cold sound of the cold system echoed through Sake's mind, startling her body. Garbage system. Roast in my heart, I walked out slowly with a smile on my face. She wants to see the abilities of her extremely clear disciple. Jiqing is a major sect in the cultivation world, with many disciples. Unlike sword cultivators, although there are few disciples, each one is an elite. True sword cultivators can defeat thousands with one enemy, and the sword energy they produce will definitely be decisive in killing. Immortal, the little girl may still be resting due to her poor health. I will send someone to invite her now. Sake walked slowly out from here, and the people of Qingshu were like a formidable enemy. The Qing family was only a third-rate cultivation family, but there was only this precious daughter in the family. So basically, they are all spoiled. Now that his daughter has caused such a big thing, it really makes him feel strong and angry. Sake junior sister, you can enjoy your fortune, Niao Ling said coldly, with a hint of mockery and disgust on her delicate face. Not too young, not too young. After his words fell, a sentence suddenly came from the air. Who? Niao Ling looked around cautiously, and the top-level cultivation of the golden elixir burst out in an instant. What's wrong with the immortal? There's no one around. Qingshu looked around at Niao Ling with some confusion. You didn't hear a sound. Niao Ling looked at Qing Su Ren in confusion. Qingshu shook his head. Sake, why hasn't it arrived yet? Niao Ling was puzzled in her heart, but the faces of the people before her did not change. She suppressed her doubts and said. Senior brother, you're looking for me. The light and agile girl's voice echoed in the air, and the girl in a peach-colored robe walked towards Niao Ling like an elf. Golden elixir cultivation. How old does it look? It looks quite old now. At this age, the golden elixir looks extremely halal and not very good. It's nothing but good-looking. After hearing the sound for the first time, Niao Ling slowly approached her and finally stopped in front of her. Niao Ling looked at the girl in front of him, smiling at him with complex eyes. What's wrong with senior brother? Sake looked at the person in front of him in confusion. Stupid, extremely pure and indescribable. In the next sentence, Niao Ling's face turned ugly, and he could already be certain that the words were uploaded from his junior sister. Senior brother, you've been working hard all the way, why don't you take a break? Qingzhou looked at Niao Ling with concern on his face and said softly. However, Ding, the male supporting character of the guide, has a favorable impression of .800. Please pay attention, host. Ha. Sake said to the system in confusion and then looked at Niao Ling. Sure enough, seeing that man's face darkened a bit. Isn't a good-looking man with a bad temper. Sake made a sarcastic remark, expressing concern that it would not change. No need, leave immediately and return to the school. After hearing this sentence from the young junior sister, Niao Ling's expression slightly improved. Yes, listen to senior brother. Sake carefully looked at Niao Ling with red eyes and listened to the system prompt, with a liking rating of .400. Ding, the favorability rating is .600. What's going on? Does this person have any illness? Saki said to the system in his mind. No, please host, carefully complete the task. Is it okay to turn off the prompt? Sake asked again, and then his mind fell silent. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Master Jiqing, after being punished, sitting on the cliff. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 3. Master Jiqing, after being punished, sitting on the cliff. Sake left hastily under the watchful gaze of its own father. Please stop Dad at any cost. Stepping out of the gate of the Qing family, Saki looked at his senior brother holding a sword and preparing to fly with it. Can senior brother take me on a journey? Xiaojiu's current sword defense skills are not enough to reach the sect. Sake's tearful eyes kept looking at Niao Ling, as if she could cry the next second if he didn't agree. Where has Laozi's big sword gone? So I'm also a waste, come on up, Niao Ling said numbly, his expression twitching uncontrollably as he listened to the words in Sake's heart. Thank you, senior brother. Senior brother is the best. Sake reached out and handed it to Niao Ling, jumping onto his sword with his strength. Seijiu lowered his head and glanced at it. The sword was good, and it was a top-grade spiritual weapon that could tell that the person in front of him should have a high cultivation level in Jiqing. Senior brother, will master punish Xiaojiu? Xiaojiu just thinks that second senior brother looks good and has no other thoughts. Sake stood behind Nialing, holding on to his hem and speaking with a grievance. Second senior brother. Is that the vase? Sake murmured in her heart, recalling a man with a stunning appearance based on a faint impression of her original self. If Sake had said such things before, Nialing would not have believed it, but after hearing what she said in her heart, Nialing felt that there was nothing to believe or not. Go back but listen to your master's instructions. If you have a clear conscience, there should be no problem, Nialing replied with a handsome face stained with contemplation, frowning. Little junior sister seems no different from before, but she is actually different. Master. Sake didn't speak, just obediently grabbed his hem. Nialing lowered her head slightly and looked at the small hand holding onto her hem, her heart twitching slightly. In the past, as the youngest disciple of the master, the junior sister was used to being arrogant and domineering. Now, such silence is truly pitiable. You don't have to. Is master called Yan Qing? Nialing was just about to comfort her when she heard the words in her heart. Junyi's face turned pale in an instant, and a word could only be swallowed into his stomach. The two of Sake flew with swords for an hour before reaching the extreme clarity. Just jumped off the sword from one side, and the group of people on the other side looked at her with fierce eyes, making Sake inexplicable. Do I have flowers on my face? Do you think I have any diseases? Sake muttered to herself, but on her face, she looked frightened, miserable, and distressed, hiding behind Nialing. Sake, you still have the face to go back to your school, bully second senior brother, and hurt little sister Molan. How dare you come back? Everyone, you and I are all criticizing the Sake. Xiaojiu doesn't have it, Xiaojiu doesn't know, Qingjiu said cautiously from behind Nialing, reaching out to the people. It turned out that the entire sect was so ignorant of etiquette, which surprised me. Sake muttered to himself again. Don't say too much here, master will have a conclusion. After listening to what Qingjiu was saying in his heart, Nialing quickly opened his mouth to stop the junior brothers around him who were preparing to say something more. Along the way, he also learned about this woman to some extent, which was looked down upon by everyone in his heart. Senior brother. What else are others going to say? Senior Nialing didn't have this attitude before he went to pick up Sake. Don't say too much. Nialing gave them a cold glance and said, Is master in the Star Palace? It's senior brother. Master is currently waiting in the Star Palace. The person below lowered their head and said something, then looked up to look at Sake, but unfortunately Sake was huddled behind Nialing, so that they wanted to attack her with their eyes, but there was nothing they could do. Let's go. Nialing turned around and looked at the pitiful girl grabbing her hem. She paused slightly, then her tone remained a bit stiff, but it also improved a lot. Jiqing has always been known as the half-god mansion. Mainly because his position was suspended in mid-air, and the Star Palace was located in the extremely clear east, where Yan Qing resided. Sake thought, considering the current situation, it seems that these people are not prepared to deal with Sake in front of their disciples. Of course, Sake would not consider these people to be taking care of the original owner's face. I'm afraid she still took care of her second senior brother's face. As she walked along, the scene resembling a fairyland made Sake's already bright eyes even more dazzling, as if all kinds of scenery had instantly merged into her eyes. It looks really nice. Nialing heard the soft voice around her and looked back, feeling a bit stunned for a moment. At that moment, she was amazed by the scenery, and Nialing was amazed because of her. In the past, Sake used to stay in the sword sect. Compared to the extremely pure elegance of the sword sect, it was indeed a bit simple. In addition, Sake would leave the sword sect only during trials of slaying demons and eliminating demons. She had never seen such a scene before when she spent all her time practicing in the sword sect. Ling wanted to hear what was on her mind, but it seemed that when she was serious, Ling couldn't hear her voice. Don't be quick with your tongue when you see your master. Just admit your mistake obediently. Ling's words left him somewhat stunned afterwards. He was actually a little worried about her. The two of them arrived at the Star Palace while speaking, and just standing at the door with Sake, they felt a powerful spiritual power. They couldn't detect their cultivation, but it was frightening. There is a true cultivation ability here. As soon as I walked in, a few people had already stood on the entire hall over there, and a faint figure could be seen in a high place separated by a white barrier. I've seen Master Sake before. I didn't kneel, but bent down and said. Sake, you know the sin. His voice was magnetic and gentle, giving people a feeling of being deep in the world, but with a bright moon in the sky and a gentle breeze, as if to surround her. The sound is nice, I want to see you. The person behind the barrier suddenly heard a sound in their ear, and their delicate eyebrows furrowed lightly. But after confirming that the girl below did not open her mouth, she had some thoughts in her heart. Sake knows no sin. Sake junior sister, you are really pretending to be innocent. You injured Emolan junior sister, but now you have completely forgotten. The speaker was a handsome-looking man, but there was a mischievous aura between his eyebrows. Sake glanced at the person and remained silent. Not by default, but based on the appearance of the characters, the plot naturally appears in the mind, forcing Sake to check. After gaining a rough understanding of the situation, Sake frowned delicately. So, who is a good girl from that family who runs to the back cliff of the school without sleeping in the middle of the night, waiting to be beaten? Except for someone like me who doesn't have much mental intelligence, what's wrong? That little girl also loves this kind of thing. Sake harbors resentment in its heart. For extremely clear people, she is really a bit puzzled. If it comes to Emolan junior sister, Sake has nothing to say, the night is dark and the road is dangerous. Xiaojio's heart is flustered, only wanting to go home. Originally preparing to refute, Muran, as the fourth senior brother who couldn't stand Sake the most, suddenly heard a voice different from the soft and sticky one just now. I was about to get angry and scold Sake for using a petty heart to satisfy a gentleman's stomach, but that soft and pitiful voice reminded me again. Muran looked at him with a puzzled expression. Sure enough, that woman had a gloomy face and a look full of disappointment, as if the words with an impatient tone just now were not meant for her. You. Just now, what did you say? Muran frowned and asked. Sake has nothing to say. Are you guilty? The sound on the high platform was long, and Sake looked up without saying a word. According to the rules of Jiqing sect, anyone who harms their fellow disciples will be imprisoned for 3 days at Housey Cliff. Do you have any complaints? Housey Cliff. Master, this. When Ling heard Hosia's words, his resolute gaze was slightly moved. Emolan, the junior sister, was only slightly scratched, but the punishment from the master the place at Housey Cliff. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Dirty Things. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Dirty Things. However, all the words ended in one glance from Jiqing's eyes. A slender and fair hand commanded the opening of the screen, wearing a water-blue robe. The man with a stunning face stood on a high position, his eyes full of all things gazing at the tiny Sake. My waist is so thin. Sake locked its eyes on the man and finally stopped at his waist, sighing in its heart. Jiqing was already certain that such frivolous words were definitely the voice of the young disciple in the audience. Her beautiful eyebrows and eyes sank, and a strand of divine consciousness silently emerged. At this moment, the system above the Sake consciousness was instantly alert, and at the moment when that strand of consciousness touched the Sake consciousness, it made changes to the Sake consciousness. Sake is always subject to punishment from its master, Sake said with a sense of disappointment, her eyebrows and eyes lifted and there was a hint of softness in the air. After apologizing to Molan, I went to Huzia. Between brushing my sleeves, the dense threads of divine consciousness slowly withdrew without any trace. The holy face of the snow lotus on the top of the mountain had no emotions, only a faint glance at the sake and disappeared into place. Housey Cliff is a great place, young junior sister, you should experience it well. After seeing Master leave, Muran walked up to Sake and said with a strange expression. Having a low cultivation level, he is a good hand at dealing with yin-yang's strange energy. Thank you, senior brother. Thank you for taking the trouble. Sake straightened up and dusted his unchanged collar, looking at him with a hint of fear in his eyes. Who are you talking about? It's strange. Muran naturally heard the bitterness in Sake's heart, and Jun Shio's face was tinged with a thin layer of anger. What else does fourth senior brother say? Muran, don't act recklessly. Nialing was a bit annoyed by the punishment given to Sake by his master, and said to Muran, then looked at the girl who was obedient beside him. I'll take you to see Molan, you're not allowed to cause trouble without reason. Along the way, the noisy and beloved Sake can now clearly feel the malice of the entire sect towards this young junior sister. Nialing looked at the obedient and silent girl beside her, her thoughts mixed for a moment. The journey to Xingmen was not far, but Nialing took the initiative to extend it for a while. Senior brother, you're here. Senior sister Molan just woke up. As soon as she entered the extreme gate, a little girl with a bun tied in her hair greeted her. Seeing Nialing's eyes filled with surprise, she spoke happily. Sake, why are you here? How dare you come? The little girl waited for Nialing to reply and asked two questions in a row, angrily facing the girl who stretched her head out from behind Nialing. Xiaoying must not be rude, Nialing scolded the girl softly. Strange to say, I used to feel impolite, but now I vaguely feel that the attitude of the sect towards the young junior sister Sake seems to be somewhat inappropriate. Senior brother. Xiaoying drank delicately and lightly stomped her feet to vent her dissatisfaction. Take me to meet Molan. The conversation between the two of them didn't involve a word of sake, and they lazily looked up and waited. The conversation between the two ended, and Sake followed behind them with Sakura's melancholic gaze. Senior brother, cough cough, why are you here? Senior sister Sake is also here. Mo Lan has seen senior brother and senior sister before. Willow eyebrows are like smoke, eyes are like stars, lips are red and seductive, skin is as white as snow, posture is graceful, and voice is coquettish with anger. She is a top-notch delicate person. When Sake sees Molan, these words naturally come to mind. Is your body still better? Nialing extended her slender hand, and the light platform girl helped her up with her wrist, her tone softened a lot. It's okay, senior sister didn't hurt me anything. It's because you guys are too nervous, senior brother. Oh, why does this sound a bit jarring? Seijiu gently raised his eyebrows and walked forward with a bitter melon face on his head. Mo Lan junior sister is fine. Next time, don't stay up late at night and go to the back cliff. After all, I'm not there every time. If I fall, it's not good. A sentence was choking and stiff, and the faces of the people present were all a bit ugly. Despite holding on to the pale and bloodless face that was even paler than Molan, Sake still refrained from immediately getting angry. Sake senior sister, it's all my fault. It's all my senior sister's fault that led to punishment. I've already told the senior master that I was careless, but the senior master and senior brother are too worried. If you're not happy, Mo Lan will go and beg the senior master now. As Mo Lan struggled, she was about to get up from her clothes. If it weren't for the small cherry next to her blocking her, she would have looked very righteous. Junior sister, I think you should rest well. If there are any more mistakes on your end, I'm afraid I won't be as simple as going to Huzia. Housey Cliff. How could senior sister? Regardless of whether it was done sincerely or not, when Molan reached out and held on to Sake's wrist, Sake was speechless for a moment. Take good care of yourself. Sake stood at the entrance of Housey Cliff, squinting her eyes and her face full of melancholy, with Nia Ling's cold words in her ear, take care of yourself. Mischievous, the petite and frail junior sister, who still carried a body fragrance, spoke to herself in a soft tone using the words of a gun and a stick, and thus, Sake was deceived. Looking back just now, she apologized in a gentle tone, not only apologizing, but also touching the little girl. Stretching out a delicate palm, Sake let out a long sigh. Beauty brings disaster to the water. Sighed lightly. Then Sake turned his back and looked around at the place that made Jiqing one pale. What is the location of Housey Cliff? Every person who has made a great mistake in Jiqing will be locked up in this place for contemplation. There are also many Jiqing disciples who died in this place due to their lack of determination. The souls of the dead in the abyss have deep grievances. They are all transformed into demons and evil spirits that torment everyone in the abyss. And the Sake, which has just entered the construction period, is something that people can easily deceive. But as soon as she stepped into the Housey Cliff, she could feel the darkness, with countless pairs of eyes looking at her. It turns out that there is such an unattractive place in Jiqing. Seijiu looked up and saw that the originally sunny weather had covered the cliff entrance with a layer of black mist as she entered. Isolating all the spiritual energy outside, Sake can be imagined that if this body were not taken over by oneself, but rather the original body, it would probably not survive for 3 days. Just as the Sake entered, the undead spirits that were originally hidden slowly emerged, and then noticed the low spiritual power of Sake, instantly surrounded it. Today, let you filthy creatures experience what the first sword cultivation of the cultivation path is. Sake bent down to pick up a dry branch from the side, waved it with his hand, and then hooked his mouth to look at the soul that had already surrounded him. Lift the withered branch in your hand and place it on your chest, release it, and then raise your index and middle fingers. As those souls approached, the withered branches on their chests instantly transformed into countless withered branches surrounding the Sake with the movement of the Sake in their hands. The undead souls around were not afraid of Sake and quickly approached her. At a close distance, the withered branches standing beside Sake moved like living beings, killing the undead souls. Bang! After killing happily on the Sake side, a loud noise suddenly came from not far away, and at the same time, the target character appears, and the side mission is to save 10,000 fires. Please go to rescue immediately, host. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Saving the sixth senior brother of the target. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Saving the sixth senior brother of the target. The sound in my mind came unstoppable, and Sake only delayed for a moment. My body's soul sense immediately felt like it was about to be withdrawn. Helplessly, Sake could only turn around and run towards the sound. In no time, Sake saw a slowly sinking figure in a cold pool. Are you sure I won't lose myself if I go down? Please rescue the host as soon as possible, the target person's vital signs have decreased. Sake gritted his teeth and cursed, then took off his outer shirt and jumped down. Just as soon as I entered the cold pool, the piercing coldness instantly pierced my heart along the meridians. At the same time, Sake's originally pale complexion turned into a lifeless gray, showing no trace of popularity. Host, please take self-rescue measures, otherwise your divine sense will be damaged and everything in the host will disappear. Shut up, what's the use of asking you? Sake can already be felt, and one's body is becoming increasingly stiff, even breathing seems to be about to solidify. Helpless, she could only extend her stiff arms and purple fingers, slowly gesturing on the water surface. Get up. Without a moment's flicker of blue light, amidst the burst of Sake, the blue magic array floated on the water surface and slowly surrounded the Sake. The art of talisman and seal script would have been contemptuous of the Sake produced by sword cultivation in the past, but now hey, huh. The cold voice in the sea of consciousness now carries a hint of doubt. It's best if you can really repair my divine sense. If not, I have a way to destroy you. At this moment, Sake's face could no longer be described as ugly, it was pale and not like a living person, because this body had exhausted its spiritual power. Even with such a simple array at this moment, she used her already fragmented divine consciousness. An awkward calm quietly arose, and suddenly Sake felt a slight gaze. With sharp eyes, he looked towards the direction of his gaze, unwilling to make contact with a probing gaze. Oh, Senior Brother Liu, are you still alive? Xiaojiuer is here to save you. He put away his sharp gaze and immediately changed his pitiful and innocent gaze towards the cold and clean man. Just as she grabbed the person's wrist, she suddenly felt her whole body sink violently. She turned around and saw that the person who had been exploring her with open eyes had fainted at some point. Waste. I don't know when it will be tonight. In a cave. Wanhua woke up slowly due to a mellow aroma. The clothes on his body were still wet, making this person who has always been respected and pampered frown beautifully. Lifting his slender fingers, he pinched the slightly painful forehead, but his gaze caught sight of the blazing flames not far away. Yo, Senior Brother Liu, you're really waking up at the right time. The girl with a pale complexion resembling a corpse looked at Wanhua with a resentful gaze, her slender fingers twirling the withered wood from time to time. Why are you? Wanhua was about to ask why you were here, but his words were blocked by the following words. Little sample, intentionally, pinch and wake up. I'm exhausted, saving people, and praying. Now I'm awake. Wanhua can be certain that these words were uploaded from his own junior sister across the street, but he is also very certain that she did not speak this sentence. Hey, it's interesting. Sixth Senior Brother, come over here to warm up quickly. Xiaojiu, we can't move Senior Brother anymore, so there's no need to help him warm up. Senior Brother won't blame Xiaojiu. Seeing the person's silly appearance, Qingjiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seems that the extremely clear children are not very intelligent. Sake has doubts in its heart. No problem. Wanhua felt that the little junior sister in front of him seemed to be becoming more and more interesting. With a wave of my hand, my wet clothes were refreshed and dry. He certainly wouldn't ask why he couldn't move himself, but he didn't stack the fire next to him. After all, my current junior sister Wanhua raised his eyebrows and eyes, and his beautiful amber eyes looked at the pale, yet also unable to conceal the beauty and sharpness of the woman across from him. How could junior sister be at Housey Cliff? Wanhua stretched out his hand and placed it on the fire, looking at the blazing flames. Senior Brother, eat it. Sake carefully handed the fish in her right hand to Wanhua, and to avoid contact with Wanhua, she even pinched only the bottom of the dead wood. Thank you. He pretended not to see the woman carefully weighing the fish in both hands, pretending not to see the shiny surface of the fish she handed over, but underneath, it was burnt pitch black. Wanhua is different from other martial brothers who dislike this little junior sister. He has no feelings for this junior sister, after all, except for being from the same sect, there is no intersection. Master punished, Xiaojiu didn't complain. Qingjiu didn't want to pay attention to the disciples of Jiqing, just silently digesting the character introductions given by the so-called system in his mind. With the simple answer of Sake, the air became quiet again. Where did the fish come from? Perhaps the air is too quiet, perhaps the fish is too fragrant, and the fire is too intense. Wanhua ate most of the fish before casually asking. I picked it up from the pool when I was fishing for you. Shake your hands into stoppers without leaving a trace. The fish in that pond are all the reflection cliffs, a trace of essence left by the repentant soul that has been transformed. To put it bluntly, it is a spiritual object, but to put it bluntly, it is a soul. Is it fragrant? Sixth Senior Brother. As if it was a thorn in his throat, Wanhua's hand holding the withered wood was momentarily unsure whether to deliver it into his mouth or let it go in the warm gaze of Sake. In the end, Wanhua had no choice but to speak again, looking at the nearby firewood. How could this fire be so small? The firewood is damp, senior brother, I apologize. Wanhua ignored her and took out his talisman seal to draw, preparing to use the fire spirit technique to increase the flames. However, Pushi. A stream of water slid down from the seal script and poured onto the already small flame, causing smoke to rise everywhere. Wanhua moved his hand that was already on the flame, shaking off the water stains on his slender fingers. What's that? It's pretty good. Oh my, it's hot today, so it shouldn't be too hot. Ha, isn't it, Cho? Saki looked at the extremely awkward scene before her and suddenly felt that her gaze at the smoking fire began to drift. Is it waste accompanied by the sound of waste in Sake's heart, followed by the cold voice in his mind? Target character Wanhua, favorability rating .200, silent, awkward. I'll go pick up some firewood, Sake said to Wanhua with a smile as she didn't want to stay with her disciple Jiqing, but she still ate without moving. She really doesn't understand why a very clear person's temper is so unpredictable. What time is it now? Wanhua didn't answer Sake's words, but suddenly frowned delicately, got up and walked towards the entrance of the mountain, looking outside and asking. Barrier. As he was about to leave the cave, Wanhua suddenly felt a spiritual power floating in the air in front of him. Oh, I made a barrier with my senior brother's jade pendant. The undead outside is too terrifying, and Xiaojiu is afraid. Senior brother won't blame me, will he? Sake licked the corners of his mouth and patted his stomach with satisfaction, then pointed towards a jade pendant emitting green light not far from the entrance of the mountain. Wanhua looked at the cracked jade pendant on the ground, his mouth twitching uncontrollably. What's wrong, senior brother? Saki asked innocently with a pair of starry eyes. No problem, what time is it now? How could he say that the jade pendant is a top-notch spiritual artifact cultivated from the millennium-old Lingquan spring eye? If you make any magical artifact with it, it must be a top-quality treasure. At this moment, by the way, it's already the hour of high. Sake also stood up and walked up to him. She never asked Wanhua why he was on Housey Cliff from beginning to end, but now seeing him ask the time, she also guessed a rough idea. There should be some treasure in this Housey Cliff. If the daytime spirits are restless, then at this moment these spirits can be called crazy. Hi, sure. Wanhua murmured for a moment. Don't go out while you're waiting here, this is for you. Wanhua took out another jade pendant from his arms and handed it to Sake, with a delicate face that carried a hint of seriousness. Senior brother, what are you going to do? And this is too valuable, I'm sorry to accept it. Speaking with embarrassment, there was no hesitation in taking the jade pendant. Looking down at the warm purple jade in his hand, this kid is quite nice and generous. Don't ask, don't look for me. I'll come back to pick you up after I finish my work. Without waiting for Sake to speak, Wanhua stepped out of the cave. The Sake on this side waved its hand in concern as it retreated to sit on a nearby stone pier. Senior brother, you must be careful. Little Wine is waiting for you to come back. Please note that the mission to save Wanhua has not been completed yet. If the host fails, they will be directly wiped out. 6 senior brothers, wait for Xiaojiu. Xiaojiu is willing to accompany senior brothers through life and death. You wait for me. Before his buttocks touched the stone mound, he was forced to stand up with Sake, gritting his teeth in his heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Novice protection period belongs to yes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Novice protection period belongs to yes. Here, Sake picked up the broken jade pendant next to the cave and walked out of the cave. There was no trace of Wanhua, who had just walked out of the cave. Cough cough cough, this little rabbit. Feeling the fluctuation of spiritual power in the air, Sake gritted its teeth and said. Are you sure you want me to save that extremely clean little trash? I think I'm the one who should be saved, cough cough cough. Sake's words fell into a heart-wrenching cough. Then a hint of bright red slid down my lips. Sake has never felt so weak before, it's like coughing up blood in the wind and being physically disabled and determined. The host's divine consciousness is stable, please complete the task as soon as possible. The cold mechanical sound echoed in my mind again, and the action of coughing up blood in Sake became even more intense. Cruel. But in the end, I had no choice but to listen to the system's words. I raised my hand and grabbed a touch of spiritual power in the air, and Sake glanced at it. That's right. It was easy to find a huge wall connected by thorns and vines from the remaining spiritual Sake in the air. Sake looked around and said, "There's no door, I can't do anything about it. My spiritual power is low now, you know." She lifted her hand and wiped the sweat off her forehead. If she had walked for a quarter of an hour, she would have gasped for sake as if she was about to breathe her lungs out. Walk 100 meters on the right and inject spiritual power into it. It is unknown what Sake is on the other side of the wall, but her divine sense is slightly excited. Although this body is weak, the spirit of Sake itself is strong enough to resonate with something equally powerful. After listening to the system's words, Sake hesitated a bit. Since she had already felt something powerful on the other side, with her physique, she was afraid of dying in the past. Please don't be afraid, the system will provide new players protection for the host in the early stage, so they won't lose their lives. Please rest assured to complete the task. The meaning is that the front will guarantee that I won't die, but the back won't care. When I just jumped, you didn't say that. Why are you afraid I'll hit you? Who is Sake? The most skilled junior sister in the entire sword sect, none of the senior brothers in the past were stunned by her. With the current system, Sake naturally has a clear mind and can easily grasp the key points. Seeing that the system was no longer speaking and Sake was no longer making things difficult for him, and knowing that he would not lose it, his suspended heart was let go. Even if it's only the early stage, it's enough. Sake won't always be so weak. Following the system's instructions, I walked 100 meters to the right and placed my hand on the wall made of thorns, slowly injecting spiritual power. As the system said, the tangled thorns slowly moved and then dispersed into a humanoid-sized passage. The walls were thick, and the Sake took a while to walk out. However, just as we walked out, our vision was also wide. Sake's feet had just stepped into the ground on the other side of the wall, and she felt the air around her becoming scorching. She was not sure what had happened, but the next second she was knocked down by a black figure. Pa! The Sake that was about to lift its head was only slightly moved when it was forcefully pressed down with both hands. Roar! A faint sandalwood fragrance wafted through the breath of Sake, and this scent was not unfamiliar to Sake, as it had only recently rescued people from the cold pool. She cautiously got up from the ground and indeed looked up to see a very handsome face. He did not look at herself, but a pair of bright and deep eyes looked not far away. Senior Brother Liu, what's going on? This man intentionally fell and killed me upon hearing two sounds, one who turned his head and glanced at the Sake. I'm sorry, junior sister. I didn't mean to, but why did you come? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Can you stop nagging and just take action? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Can you stop nagging and just take action? Senior brother left in a hurry, and coupled with just being rescued from the cold pool, Xiaojiu was quite worried, so let's take a look. I'm almost dead, I've coughed up blood in the wind, and I still want to find you. If you're not moved today, let me cry and see. After the Sake had finished speaking, it was about to cough, but the situation in front of her was not allowed and she could only hold it. So, the little girl with red eyes and face opened her watery apricot eyes. When she looked at you, there were probably not many people who wouldn't soften their hearts. After hearing the voice of the junior sister, Wanhua's eyes showed a smile, but it was only after seeing the bloodstains behind her that he realized that the junior sister might not have really lied. Ding! The target character's popularity rate for Wanhua is +10. I found it. A fox in the distance, covered in fiery fur, looked at the peach blossom forest with its narrow and long eyes, and finally focused on one spot. The fox slightly curled its mouth, and you could even see a hint of a smile on the furry face. It's just that the smile couldn't catch my eye, but it was filled with anger. Bang! The fierce flames blasted open the boulder where the two were hiding, and Wanhua's eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Almost at the same time, Wanhua tightly embraced the young junior sister in front of him. At the same time, the other hand holding the talisman quickly moved, swiping its finger downwards and then throwing it fiercely into the air. Shield! Without time to do any other action, Wanhua just bit his red lip and let out a strong sigh before reciting it forcefully. Bang! A sky full of golden talismans rose from the feet of Sake and Fire, like a huge wall blocking the face of Sake and Fire. The dazzling golden light really blocked the raging fire, which shocked people not far away. The immense pressure blew countless petals in the peach blossom forest, like a sudden heavy rain. Wanhua hugged the junior sister and dodged to the side. He stood up and instinctively hid the sake in his arms behind him, his deep gaze carrying obvious dissatisfaction. Petals fell one by one, and the fox with fiery fur in their eyes actually began to ignite flames all over their body, and then a killing intent emerged from their beastly eyes. Foolish humans, who allowed you to break into the forbidden area without permission. The fox's voice was a strong male voice, even though it had not yet taken on human form, it still made people feel pressured. Senior brother, is this the forbidden area of the school? Saki looked up at Wanhua with an incredulous expression and asked cautiously in his tone. This unlucky child dares to break into the forbidden area of the school. Today is truly an eye-opening experience. You can rest assured that if something happens, senior brother will take responsibility alone. Looking at the young junior sister in front of her with a pale face and pitiful eyes with tears in her eyes, even if she heard what Qingjiu had said in her heart, Wanhua still said seriously and responsibly. After all, not long ago, the junior sister jumped into the forgetful worry pool to save herself. Senior brother, that's not what I meant. You misunderstood Xiaojiu. How could Xiaojiu let senior brother go? Good kid, I think you can start as a child. I recognize you as a friend and have a sense of responsibility. Ding. Favorite rating +10. I see that you are not yet clear about the situation in front of you. Every year, a few disciples who are unaware of life and death invade the forbidden area privately. The fox obviously couldn't stand the deep friendship between the teachers in front of him. He flicked his tail and a strong flame flew towards the two of them in an instant. I am well aware that you are the guardian beast of the extremely clear forbidden area, but I do not really want to break through the forbidden area. I just want to borrow a trace of essence from my senior. I want to study fire talismans. Wanhua dodged with Sake as he walked up and said. Senior brother, stop talking. After the sentence, Sake only feels 10,000 flames, was spoken, the attack of the fox behind him became even more fierce. Fortunately, Sake already felt that his eyebrows were about to burn. My brother, I'm almost roasted. I mean, can we move our hands and not nag? The first sword cultivator, who has always admired the use of force to determine everything, expressed that he really can't stand the lip service of these sections. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Little junior sister is willing to sacrifice for me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Little junior sister is willing to sacrifice for me. Junior sister, senior brother wants to tell you something. Senior brother can't beat this muddy fire fox. After hearing the words in Sake's heart, Wanhua, who was holding Sake and dodging, suddenly lowered his head and said in Sake's ear. Brother, can you be a little more outrageous? You can't beat yourself to be like the real one, jumping up and down in front of others. Junior sister, this muddy sky fire fox is not an ordinary spirit beast, it is an ancient divine beast. Wanhua remained silent when he saw Sake, but as expected, he still heard the voice of his junior sister. After realizing that he was looked down upon by his junior sister, Wanhua quickly explained. A cool and handsome face, whether burned by fire or feeling embarrassed, was tinged with a hint of crimson. Sake no longer wanted to talk to the silly senior brother beside her. She took a deep breath in silence and then let out a long sigh. Then he reluctantly calmed down and said to Wanhua, "Senior brother, did you bring a blank rune paper? I'm tired, let's destroy it." Sake has become very speechless to the children of Jiqing, and these are the good disciples under Master Jiqing. What's wrong? Yes, there is. Wanhua saw that the sake was not very good looking. He knew he deserved it, so he cautiously answered, and then took out a handful of talisman paper from his pocket. Sake didn't know that the sixth senior brother she despised in front of her was actually one of the top talismans in the mainland. It was just that she had been studying talismans for a while and was not aware of it. She had been injured in her spiritual spirit, so she didn't dare to use spiritual power too much in order to maintain her health. Okay. Speaking of Sake, he grabbed one of his hands in the puzzled eyes of Wanhua. Little junior sister, what is this for? Wanhua's body stiffened as he grasped his hand in Sake, and then quickly withdrew his hand. Sake was swayed by his movements, and the two of them shook slightly as they fled. Following their firefox all the way behind them, seizing the opportunity, a fireball flew towards them. Sake was discovered in time, regardless of the struggle of Wanhua, he grabbed his hand, and the two of them jointly infused spiritual power and drew on the blank rune paper. At the moment when the fireball approached them, a magic formation suddenly appeared in front of them. As soon as the fireball touched the formation, the huge fireball disappeared into the formation. Then Su Qingjiu grabbed Wanhua's hand and drew a talisman paper, throwing it behind Firefox. Then, the fireball that was originally running towards Sakju and the other two suddenly appeared behind Heohun Tian Firefox. It is precisely where the sake was thrown off the talisman paper. Bang! A violent explosion sounded, and Sake with Wanhua drew several talismans and threw them at the feet of Firefox. Then, as Firefox was stunned by the explosion, Sake slapped Wanhua's back directly. Senior brother, stop staring and leave. After using her spiritual power again, Sake could no longer take a step forward. She thought that the slap she had put in a lot of effort on Wanhua's body was just a tickling force in Wanhua's eyes. When Sake rescued Wanhua from the cold pool, she noticed a disorder in his spiritual power, so she chose to inject the spiritual power talisman together. After all, her spiritual power is also negligible at this time. Sooner or later, he will die in the hands of a very clear child. At this moment, Wanhua finally understood the meaning of sake. A hint of complexity flashed in his deep gaze before quickly disappearing. He held the sake and jumped towards the spot where the talisman paper was thrown, the belly of the fox. Just as the two were close to the talisman paper, the fox suddenly reacted and waved its paw at them. Sake was held in Wanhua's arms, so its gaze happened to be on her back. Please save the target character, otherwise it will be erased. The voice of the system in my mind had just fallen, and Sake used all its strength to switch positions with Wanhua. If the sake moves too late, that paw will probably hit Wanhua's head. Ah! The sharp claws slashed fiercely across the back of Sake, shedding a layer of flesh and blood. Sake immediately fainted from the pain, and as he was about to faint, there was only one sentence in his mind. Gone, Jiqing, fortunately it's not him. She was injured and protected by beginners, but if Wanhua is injured and gone, she really is gone. After hearing the words of Sake, Wanhua's mood became very complicated. Is it true that junior sister doesn't like second senior brother, but rather likes me and is willing to sacrifice herself for me, End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 6 Senior Brothers Punished. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. 6 Senior Brothers Punished. After a flash of golden light, Wanhua appeared on Mount Jiqing holding sake. Wanhua dare not delay at all, because the vital signs of sake are already very weak. When holding the little junior sister in his arms in the posture of holding a child, Wanhua finally realized that the usually arrogant and domineering little junior sister was so pitiful. He walked steadily but quickly towards the spirit medicine sect holding sake. 6th Senior Brother. Senior Brother Lu, are you here? Is that the troublemaker holding me, Junior Master Sake? Sake is injured, I don't know if it will die. If it dies, it will be fine, and it won't harm several martial uncles. Along the way, Wanhua held Sake in his arms, and passers-by watched as they both wanted to discuss a few words, including their peers and younger generations. But when it comes to sake, there is always a sarcastic tone, and one can feel how repulsive sake is in the minds of these people. Master Qiming, please help little sister quickly. Little sister is going to be gone. As soon as Wanhua ran to the spirit medicine sect, he stood at the door and started shouting loudly to prevent those who were shouting from not hearing him or even bringing spiritual power. If Sake still had consciousness to hear this sentence, he would definitely point at his nose and curse at him, unlucky child, cursing people to death. Bang! I only heard a loud noise from the alchemy room of the spirit medicine sect, followed by an old man with messy hair and black smoke and ashes on his face. He walked out with a gloomy expression and looked at Wanhua. I'm talking about you, kid. You're usually startled. If you talk normally, you'll die. Stop talking, senior uncle. Please take a look at me, junior sister. Wanhua held the sake in the position of holding the child, dragging her legs and placing her head on his shoulder. Because he didn't know the position to put it down, he kept holding it. When I looked at the old man again, his originally deep eyes suddenly lit up. Is this sake? The old man looked at the girl lying in the arms of Wanhua without a trace of anger, and after a while, he asked in confusion. You should know that even though sake is not favored by the school, it is still proud, like a peacock that never bows its head, as everyone in the school knows. I just didn't expect to see her like this. What's going on? How could you suffer such a serious injury? This injury. The old man was initially startled when he saw the blood and flesh blurred back of sake, and then realized something was wrong. The obvious marks on the back of sake are claw marks, and there are also burning marks. There is only one place in the entire sect where this spirit beast exists. It's my fault. Wanhua remained silent for a moment before speaking in a deep voice. You child, how do you explain to the leader? The old man glanced at Wanhua and said with a somewhat solemn expression on his face. I see you're in a daze. First, treat the young junior sister well. After the young junior sister is fine, I will go and apologize to the master. The old man shook his head helplessly and gestured for Wanhua to put down the sake. Then he took out the spiritual medicine from his own cloth bag, used spiritual power to catalyze, and put it into the mouth of sake. Her condition is very strange. Although the injury is very serious, it seems that her heart meridian and spiritual power in her body are protected by something and there is no major problem, so there is no need to worry. On the second day Sake was awakened by the noise outside the door. She stood up from the bed, her breath filled with the fragrance of medicine, and the surrounding environment was not familiar with Sake. I had some doubts in my heart, but before I could think about Sake, the noisy sound outside rang out again. Go and see, Senior Brother 6 broke into the forbidden area without permission. Master wants to punish Senior Brother 40.9 times with a divine whip. Who is it? Sake was puzzled. The target character Wanhua Blackout accounts for 10%. Please pay attention and correct the target character's life trajectory in a timely manner. Wanhua. Sake only then realized and quickly opened the door, running with the crowd. You know the sin. In the same words, the same person, Sake should suspect that Jiqing only knows this sentence. Master, little wine. The disciple is aware of sin and has nothing to do with others. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Anyway, no one likes small wine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Anyway, no one likes small wine. When Sake saw Wanhua kneeling in the martial arts arena and being watched by the crowd, he let out a few clicks in his heart, but without stopping, he walked towards Wanhua's direction. On the surface, there are concerns. After pushing the crowd aside and walking to Wanhua's side, Sake knelt beside Wanhua and looked up at Jiqing. But just as he spoke a little, he was interrupted by Wanhua. Sake. How could she be here? I heard that senior brother 6 broke into the forbidden area because of Sake. Really? I'll tell you, how could a celestial being like senior brother 6 commit such a rebellion against the heavenly gang? This Sake is really a disaster. Master should expel Sake from the sect. The servants were discussing, and Sake looked at Jiqing with a pale face but pretended to be strong. However, yes, your 6th senior brother is amazing. Your 6th senior brother is so great. Why haven't you seen anyone plead for mercy? Standing in front of them, Jiqing and the 6 senior brothers of Sake next to them all changed their faces and looked at the pitiful woman who seemed to be about to collapse at any moment. Is this little junior sister's voice? I remember punishing you on Housey Cliff. Why do you also want to disobey the teacher's orders? Jiqing was puzzled in her heart, but there was no change in her stunning and cold face. She just looked down at the Sake from above. Master, it's all my disciple's fault. It was my disciple who broke into the forbidden area in order to infiltrate the Fire Fox's essence. Junior sister was implicated in order to help me, and it's none of her business. After experiencing everything that happened yesterday, Wanhuzi still had many doubts about junior sister Sake in his heart, but he had to admit that junior sister saved him. Senior brother Lu, it's not like this, master. It's all Xiao Jiu's fault. If you want to punish him, just punish Xiao Bar. As Sake spoke, 2 lines of clear tears slid down her fair face. She looked at Wanhua and then at Jiqing, who couldn't help shaking her head. It's a forbidden area. Not to mention that it was easy for 2 disciples to break in here. Let's just say that when someone broke into the forbidden area, not a single person came and discovered it. It was said that the 2 of us, who were not interested in this matter, almost stumbled there. This sect. Because these 2 sentences about Sake were meant for Wanhua and Jiqing, they naturally heard the voice of Sake. Wanhua only felt that the little junior sister appeared soft and sticky on the surface, but in her heart, she was hating the heavens and the earth. She couldn't help but sweat, and even dared to say that she was completely pure, this little junior sister. After hearing the voice of Sake, Jiqing trembled slightly as he held the hand that whipped the divine whip. Are you really willing to bear everything, including these 40.9 whipping techniques? On that dusty face, a pair of deep black eyes flowed an elusive light, making one want to explore 3 parts, but it would stop at his cold and ethereal demeanor. Sake looked at Jiqing's face. TSK, indeed he is the supreme god. His waist, body, face. I am willing to bear everything. Sake lifted her hand and wiped away the tears on her face, looking very seriously at Jiqing. Don't meddle in your own business. Do you know the consequences of bearing the 49 lashes of the divine whip? Wanhua was taken aback when he heard the words of Sake, then turned his head to look at Sake, his eyes showing complexity and disbelief. A head of dark and dense hair, with a pair of slender peach blossom eyes under a pair of sword eyebrows, full of affection, making people easily fall into it. A tall and straight nose, thick and thin red lips tightly pursed after speaking. It's okay, Xiaojiu was never under anyone's control. Anyway, Everyone doesn't like me and I'm dead. Sake looked at Wanhua's face, with a hint of a smile on her pale face. Then she lowered her head, her curled eyelashes covering the thoughts in her eyes. Don't you guys dislike me? You actually care about me now, isn't it a bit ridiculous? When he died, he told my old father at home that Xiaojiu would go to pay homage to him in the next life. End of this chapter.